The process to remove a Conservative Prime Minister outside of a general election is the following. 15% of Conservative MPs must write to the chair of the party's 1922 committee, which represents backbench Conservatives. Then, within around 24 hours, a vote of no confidence will be held among all Conservative MPs, and if the results show a majority back the leader, they remain in post. If a majority vote against the leader, they must resign. Then an election for their replacement ensues. There are currently 359 Tory MPs, so to launch a leadership election, 54 need to send a letter to the 1922 committee. The process is secret, so we don't know how many letters have so far been handed in, but Tory backbencher Andrew Bridgen thinks the threshold could be reached soon.
I think we're quite close to the threshold for the 54 letters. I was told last night by colleagues from the 2019 intake that they were on the move and they were going to be depositing a large number of letters today. I'm fairly comfortable we're going to get to the 54 threshold this week, which means that the confidence vote will probably be Wednesday next week.
Andrew Bridgen there mentioned the 2019 intake of MPs. That is most notably the group of MPs who won seats in the so-called Red Wall. They were originally assumed to be loyal to Boris Johnson because of his Brexit position that was seen to be so successful there. But the relationship has gone very sour. As you'll know, one of the plotters has now defected to Labour, and it's an explosive situation that will have to be handled pretty sensitively. Unfortunately for Boris Johnson, sensitivity hasn't been on show. A cabinet minister told The Times, "It's pretty sickening. They were only elected because of him. Most of them are a load of nobodies. It's nuts." Some have suggested that comments like that could push Red Wall MPs to make extreme action, potentially more of them crossing the floor like Wakeford. But personally, I think if they do, the reasons will be far more mundane. A poll released by JL Partners for Channel 4 News shows that in Red Wall seats, Labour are now 11 points ahead of the Tories. And that would mean the Conservatives would lose all but 3 of the 45 seats held in those historic Labour heartlands. So you can see why they might want to get rid of the Prime Minister, who polling shows is incredibly unpopular in those seats. When it comes to whether voters think that he's doing a good job, Boris Johnson is on minus 35, which is a score 33 points lower than Keir Starmer. Dahlia, put yourself in the shoes of a Conservative MP elected in 2019 in a historically Labour seat. Do you hand in your letter to the 1922 committee today?
I probably would. I think it is probably a strategic decision at this point. The Labour, I think that if I wanted to defect, the Labour Party would be clearly willing to have me. Doesn't matter who I am or what I've done. But I think that that's probably a little too risky. I think the halfway house of sending that letter and adding to the numbers needed to create a challenge would be strategic, because if you are a Red Wall MP, these aren't seats where you can just win by being a Tory. This isn't Suffolk. In fact, without the issue of Brexit, which I think was a leveraging point in a lot of these areas in the last election, and for many voters, it was non-negotiable, and it was something that really drove how they voted. Now you don't have that issue. Brexit has happened. It's done. The Tories don't hold much weight there. And I think that the kind of reputation of sleaze and corruption and this idea of one rule for them, one rule for us has been very evident and very public in the way that the Tories have conducted themselves over the past, year or so, the past few years. And so that will reaffirm many of the historic suspicions that people in these areas will have of the Conservative Party. And if you're running in the next election, you want to distance yourself as much as you can from that without necessarily actually jumping ship and changing party. Being able to say in an election, well, I took a stand when this was happening, is probably the only way that you have a chance in hell of winning that seat again, although who knows what's going to happen over the next few years. But, on the other hand, I think that I don't think that would be enough to really distance yourself from what this Conservative government has come to represent, because I think a lot of people have suspicions that a lot of people in the Conservative Party knew that this was going on. A lot of them knew that, as I said, in last week's show, that email invitation was sent out to 100 people. It was attended by 50 people. It was one of probably multiple different events that happened. I don't think that just saying, okay, I'm gonna say something publicly now that it's clear that Johnson is kind of a bit of a dead man walking. I don't know if that's going to be enough to separate these MPs from the reputation that the party has developed over the past few months, and especially in light of how the Conservative Party is likely to have been traditionally and historically seen in these areas, which is as, a party for the rich, a party for the elite. And it was Brexit that pulled them, towards that party. And without that, I think that the reputation precedes the party. And so this is probably a last attempt by those MPs, not a last attempt, but a solid attempt by those Red Wall MPs to sort of say, I'm a new kind of Tory. I'm not like them. I got Brexit. I was how we got Brexit done, by having all of that kind of conservative majority. I think that's what we're seeing. That's the calculation.